Welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. Our theme for 2025 is the future of work. Meaning is the new money. In a world shaped by rapid innovation and constant change, the pursuit of purpose and impact has never been more important. I'm Dr. John Dentico, your host, bringing over 30 years of experience in leadership, strategic thinking, and purpose-driven innovation. Here, we tackle the pressing challenges of our time, from the rise of artificial intelligence to the growing need for meaning in the workplace. Together, we'll uncover how leaders can ethically integrate AI to enhance decision-making and keep humanity at the heart of their organizations. Remember, amidst all the technological advancements, in the end, it's always about the people. This podcast is your resource for actionable tools, thought-provoking discussions, and inspiring stories. It's time to go beyond leadership development and focus on leadership impact, creating workplaces where people thrive, innovation flourishes, and meaning truly becomes the new currency. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Now, let's throttle up and dive into today's episode. Hello again and welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Dr. John Dentico. With me today is Kyle Becker, strategic advisor at Qualia AI Consulting, where he helps organizations build AI-augmented workforces that enhance human potential and drive meaningful business results. A former Marine reconnaissance staff sergeant, Kyle brings a unique combination of military-honed leadership and advanced AI expertise to guide digital transformation with precision and purpose. At Qualia AI, Kyle has led transformative initiatives across industries, developing generative AI for healthcare, applying machine learning for disease prevention, and accelerating innovation in the energy sector. His work blends cutting-edge technology with strategic management practices to ensure sustainable growth and compliance. Kyle is also a vocal advocate for redefining leadership in the AI era. He challenges the myth that management is obsolete, arguing instead that effective leadership and accountability are essential for real change. His perspective resonates with organizations commit to building high-functioning, human-centered teams. Whether discussing AI strategy, digital transformation, or leadership evolution, Kyle offers grounded insights and actionable ideas for the future of work, and I'm truly pleased to have a fellow veteran here with me today. Good morning, Kyle. How are you?
Good morning, Dr. John. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Listen, just call me John. I prefer that.
Sure.
So I'd like to ask you this question to start off. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? And what were some of the fundamental influences in your early life?
I grew up in West Virginia, out in the sticks in Appalachia. My mother was a home health nurse. So we got to, not only were we sort of integrated in the culture out there in that environment, but my mom just brought home the wildest stories of, deep country West Virginians. So it was quite the experience growing up. I was born in Portland, Oregon, right? But at a very young age, my family moved to West Virginia, and we were a bit of sort of fish out of water in that environment at first. But yeah, I grew up in the sticks. I had a lot of freedom. I was the only house in this valley. So I had a lot of freedom to run around in the woods and explore things just with my dogs. It's a bit of a wild upbringing. Some of it was fantastic. Some of it was a bit like the Lord of the Flies, with my brothers and I. Very unstructured, but yeah, I guess how that formed me, as kind of what applies today is in West Virginia, the culture out there, I've noticed, and I love West Virginians, but they rely a lot on truisms and adages. They like doing things the way things have always been done. I would always question it. I'd be like, is that really true? It doesn't sound right to me. And oftentimes it wasn't. And if you were to personally question the conventional wisdom, you would quickly become a pariah in environments like that. I think that intellectual isolation attracted me to statistics and factual representation of data later in life. I found you could get to the truth of things. You could look at things from a first principles perspective and reason your way up through there and use statistical methods to arrive at what may be true and what may not be true, what would be statistically significant and what wouldn't be. You don't have to always rely on truisms. I think there is a lot of merit in wisdom and experience, and you shouldn't dismiss the wisdom of your elders. But at the same time, I think we have methods of finding out what the truth is by way of data and statistical formulas and such. So that's how I contrast my upbringing in West Virginia with what I do now with Qualia AI. But when after my childhood, I dropped out of high school when I was about 17, and I went to a military reform school, kind of like what you would see on TV, where these kids get kind of yelled at for 6 months. Well, it's not just yelled at. That whole institution, the Mountaineer Challenge Academy, is designed to set troubled kids up for success as best they can. I was blessed to go to that academy. Shortly after that, I joined the Marine Corps, and I spent 12 years in the Marines on active duty. Most of the time, I was in a unit called reconnaissance, in which we did ground recon. You're in a group of 6 guys. You insert in front of the main forces, the main Marine battalion, and you scout out the area. You take pictures and you write reports and you send them back by way of radio frequencies, HF and VHF radio frequencies, to inform the commanders, the decision makers, how to maneuver their troops in the way that, is most effective, safest, lethal, right? That's kind of the heart of recon. It's a little bit different than the rest of the Marine Corps, where Marines kind of go in there looking for a fight. Recon, you're trying not to get caught. The word compromise, it has this connotation that gives you shivers. You don't want to get compromised. You don't want to get caught. And it happens sometimes. And there's horror stories about recon Marines getting compromised, in Afghanistan, in Iraq. We kind of sneak around, take pictures, and send these reports back of the enemy, the environment, and so forth. And then we extract without getting caught. Sometimes a raid force will come in and we'll help guide the raid force in. We may even do something called a sniper-initiated raid, in which we'll take out a sentry immediately before the raid force makes entry into a building or whatever the objective is. After that, we would extract. So how does that relate to Qualia AI? I mean, I think it relates a lot. Data is the lifeblood of AI. Data engineering analytics goes hand in hand with artificial intelligence. In reconnaissance, we're collecting AI, trying to bring clarity about the environment to our Marine brothers and sisters before they get into it, so they know what to expect. In artificial intelligence, it's the same thing. We want to collect. The first thing you got to do is have a robust data infrastructure with quality data, because especially with these new generative AI models that can generate their own information, if the fundamental data they're using isn't clean, isn't good, then they're going to recycle this data. Becomes this toxic sludge of information that doesn't do anybody any good. In fact, it can be quite damaging. You're in financial industry or healthcare industry, and you need to do financial forecasting, right? Or you're a doctor that needs AI to identify tumors in X-ray. It is critical that your data is in good condition. It's just going to get worse and worse. You're going to misdiagnose people. If you're in finance, you're going to misforecast, stock moves or the financial health of your company. Right. So I have almost, what would you say? Obsessive is a strong word, but it's very, very important to me in our team at Qualia AI to ensure that the information we have, the information that our clients have, is in a good state and it's improving, right? Before we put AI solutions on top of it, because we understand how critical it is for the whole enterprise to have quality data throughout their business units, equipping their executive leadership with quality information as well, because of the risk if that information is corrupted, it can be catastrophic to the company. It's the oil in the machine. If you don't change the oil and your car breaks down, we believe it's the same way with information in your company.
Yeah. I mean, the quality of the data, how the data is then formatted and used can really represent a significant boon to the organization. I would like to move on to this notion of redefining leadership in the era of AI. How do you see it changing? And can you give me some specifics? And if possible, can you give me a definition of what you believe leadership should be in the world of AI as it exists today?
Absolutely. Leadership in the world of AI, put it most simply in a way that resonates with most people, is you have to imagine traditional leadership structures augmented with AI. So you'll take your organizational chart, a consumer goods company, broken down into several different business units, making and marketing different products. Within those business units, you have different levels of leadership as well, right? So that organizational chart, you now need to imagine it with AI employees, AI teammates, and those humans need to be supervising and collaborating with those AI tools, those AI agents, as we call them, in a very similar way that they would with human beings. AI agents are not the same as human beings, but I believe it's most useful that leadership uses a similar paradigm, similar mentality of like, well, how would I manage an employee that's doing well or that's not doing well? Well, apply those same principles to your AI agent or your AI solution as well. If the output is not good, well, then you need to train it. You need to talk to the person. You need to counsel the person. You need to enable this individual to succeed. And sometimes if they can't succeed, they need to find employment somewhere else. They need to go to a different environment where they can exceed. It's very similar with AI, especially the way it is now. It's becoming more intuitive, I believe, more ubiquitous for everyone. You don't have to be a data scientist. You really don't even have to know how to code in a lot of the situations to control and guide your AI, right? Something that was once very esoteric has now become commonplace. I believe that the leadership of today should be approaching it again in a very similar way that you would approach traditional leadership. So, for example, you've heard of prompt engineering. I don't really like that term, but prompt engineering is you're giving instructions to your generative AI tool. It's very similar to how you would address an employee. It's like, I want you to do this. Here's a few examples of what good looks like. Your role is this, and your tasks are 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can write it in plain language. The leadership of today needs to take that seriously. AI solutions have to be assigned on the organizational chart. These AI agents should be assigned to human supervisors. These people need to take responsibility for everything their AI agents do or fail to do and the quality of their output, right? They need to be measured by that in their performance reviews, right? They need to say, well, how well are you managing your AI? Like, how well are your AIs moving the KPIs that we've set, the key performance indicators, right? If your AIs are not performing, that human needs to take responsibility for it. If the AIs are performing quite well, then the human should be rewarded for it, right? All going back to their performance reviews. In the age of AI, leadership needs to take responsibility for their AI and not just the IT department. Because everybody is using AI now. Just about everybody I speak to in one way or the other, they're employing this tool because it's so useful. Let's own that. Let's get it on the organizational chart, right? Let's let the performance reviews reflect, right? And let's really integrate it into our enterprises in such a way that a leadership takes ownership.
It's a very interesting perspective. And I had not thought of it this way. I'm going to have to really grind this in my brain after this podcast. Let me just give you my perspective on how I see this. First of all, I would be very reluctant to somehow take the capability of AI and fasten it to an organizational structure,
Mhm.
because an org chart is the language of bureaucracy. Okay, that's
Mm,
how bureaucracy speaks to us. It's through the org chart. The problem bureaucracy has is that it hates change. It's just
mm,
absolutely, it can tolerate incremental change, but anything that's beyond incremental change, it hiccups in a bad way.
mm,
Okay. So taking the capability of AI and fastening it to a structure is, and I get your point,
mhm,
that in effect, what we're doing here is we're making sure that whatever, whether they're human or artificial intelligence agents are operating according to what we needed to do. Okay, I get that. But I see AI as so much more creative and so much more built for rapid, complex change, for example. Take a glass of water that's half full, right? And the other half is filled with oil, right? So you have a half a glass of water and a half of glass of oil. Shake it up all you want. They're going to separate. The problem is that as much as you try to mix these two substances together, in the end, they're going to separate.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an
So
excellent
let's just
metaphor.
yet they can exist side by side in the same glass, right?
Oh, there you go.
And I think, yeah, they can exist side by side in the same glass, but trying to mix them in the end is a futile endeavor.
Yeah.
So I think what happens is this: you have within the structure of the bureaucratic org chart, which in my mind becomes nothing more now than a legal framework. You know, if something goes wrong in the organization, somebody steals or some other bad thing happens, this framework steps in and handles that. Okay, we have the procedures, the protocols, the standard operating procedures to handle that. But within the confines of people working in a collaborative environment, you have to let it be free and let those people work. Let the people with the AI agents, their hands in the different AI agent pies, work in a sense of freedom and collaboration. It doesn't restrict them because, I tell people, in fact, I was just doing a presentation last week. I told people I've been waiting 30 years for this moment in time because 30 years ago, I was part of a group that looked at the distribution of information through the internet. I like to say I was there when the browsers first came online. We looked at this and said, if this continues, the power of information and knowledge is going to be in the hands of everyone. And that in and of itself is going to change leadership. Because instead of the CEO or the COO at the top being the information gurus, anybody can have information. It's been written many times that junior people in the organization know more than the leaders.
Yeah.
And it's on steroids now, in a manner of speaking. One of the things I say sometimes is, who's the smartest person in the room? Which leads me to this notion that maybe the person who, a 25 or 26-year-old, who spends 4 or 5 hours a day prompting with AI and looking at the future of the organization through different strategies is the person who may be the smarter one in the room for sure, if you catch my drift. I'm actually embarking on this right now. I'm creating a set of online courses, and I'll just mention it because of my work. I'm now embarking on something called the Throttle Up operating system, which is a whole new leadership operating system for companies today. If you stop and think about it, we can't manage or lead companies with hierarchical models that we have so embraced for so many years, remnants, if you will, of the industrial era. So now what do we, I think what we need is a complete new operating system for leadership in this AI world. And I'd love to get your reflection on that idea.
A new operating system. I think those are excellent points. The organizational chart or the bureaucracy coupled with a hybrid organizational chart wherein the AI agents communicate with each other in a spider web networked event underpins your oil and water glasses metaphor. They communicate and interact with each other that also have distinct communication protocols. One thing about this age of AI is that information can flow seamlessly throughout the organization instantaneously. So when one AI agent learns something, they all learn something because they're sharing the same knowledge base, right? That is incredible, right? What that can mean is when the board of directors or the team of top level executives set the strategic direction, right? Instantly, the AI agents on the front line are going to have that context of the strategy, and they're going to be able to do their day-to-day processes accordingly. So if the company decides to shift gears and go after a target customer that's underexploited, that's more lucrative, the AI agents that's putting the products together is going to be aware of that as well and know how to sort of fine tune and develop the features that this new target audience is going to want to have, like instantaneously. And I agree with you. You would not want to stifle that, right? That is one of the blessings, one of the things that's going to happen with agents, and in particularly with this concept of multi-agent systems. I think it's Andrew NG. He talks a lot about multi-agent systems and how when you have one AI agent reason with another one or a whole network of AI agents to achieve a common goal, their collective reasoning is far more powerful and correct than a singular AI agent, even if it's using the most advanced frontier models like GPT 3.0 or the collective reasoning of I think it's O4. The ChatGPT models naming conventions are quite confusing. But my point is you can take some generative AI models that were developed 1-2 years ago and you string them together, they're more advanced than the more recent frontier models. So the collective reasoning is great, but also what that means is, again, all the AI agents throughout your company can be networked together. They can be trained on all the information about your enterprise and be able to move instantaneously in sync with each other. And they're informing their human counterparts of this information as well. So, John, are you familiar with this economic concept of the Laffer curve?
I know of Art Laffer, but I have not explored the pluses and minuses of the Laffer curve. But go ahead.
Well, my understanding of the Laffer curve is about bureaucracy, too much bureaucracy stifling an organization, right? I don't disagree with you, but at the same time, if you don't have any sort of controls in place, that's not good either. How do you ensure the safety of your organization's proprietary information? How do you move everyone in a united front if you don't have some semblance of organizational structure? The Laffer curve applies more broadly to the economy, right? Where it talks about we need some regulation. We need some regulation, right? So we don't have robber barons. We don't have big corporations exploiting people. But too much regulation is stifling. Like you can't get stuff done. You end up in like a 1984 sort of environment, and you can't just unleash the economy or the free market to do its thing. So the Laffer curve is the idea of finding the right balance. That speaks to the fundamental concept of how much power is the right amount of power, how much control is the right amount of control. As that applies to AI, the organizational chart is still useful, but we need some sort of hybrid, right? Where we do have the organizational chart, we do have human supervisors that are both equipped and responsible for their AI agents, but the AI agents also need their own structure in which they communicate, in which they have defined communication channels and protocols and so forth that more enables them and guides them than it does stifle them.
I would absolutely agree. And structure is vital. You have to have structure. If you have no structure, then things get way out of hand. I don't believe bureaucracy is going away. I think it's so entrenched in our psyche that it will be there, or an org chart, if we prefer that. Going back to the metaphor of the glass with half water, half oil. Okay. The question is, how do they sit together? How does the oil and the water actually contact with one another? Part of this is something I've really embraced myself, and that is finding the right mix of structure and AI performance. People, and this is where the new operating system comes in, are going to have to embrace doubt and ambiguity. Ambiguity and doubt has to become your friend. And I'll explain why in a minute. Because certainty, when we know things for certain, certainty drives away collaboration. You don't need collaboration because everything's certain. Well, we know we're going to do this is what's going to happen. But in this world, that is going to speed up more and more. And where people are really trying to evaluate what kind of meaning they get out of life as well.
Love that.
What kind of meaning do I derive? I think that when people accept and embrace doubt and ambiguity, that
Yeah.
opens the door for collaboration
Getting comfortable with
because
ambiguity.
you don't know. Yeah,
Mhm.
let's explore this
Mhm.
together. So that's something I think people are not necessarily aware of. You hear about collaboration all the time, but they don't understand that there's a root here. Collaboration is fostered during periods of time when people don't know. So I
Mhm.
think that's an operating system, a leadership perspective. I'll just tell you, my leadership model that I started developing over 30 years ago, I've mentioned this many times on my podcast, is based on one thing. It has one premise, and the premise is contribution. Okay, we have a
Mm.
problem. Who wants to jump in here? Anybody got ideas? Let's go.
Right.
That kind of a thing. So that is where that operating system fits in. This is the mindset that you have to have in order to invite people to be part of the process. So it's very interesting to me. I'd love to get your reflection on that.
I love that. I think, yeah, being comfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity and be willing to embrace it is the right mindset. And that takes humility and putting your ego in check. I 100% agree. In fact, I'm really put off by people who are over certain. Growing up in West Virginia, sometimes I think people are just a little too certain about things. Do you really know? Or maybe there's a better way of doing this, and maybe we should embrace a little bit of self-doubt, be okay with being vulnerable with our group, like having the trust in each other that you can come off as perhaps ignorant but curious, right? Because if you don't do that, how are you going to arrive at the best solution, right? Or a better solution, right? If you just stick with the old way. I think the trade-off there, though, that we would need to be careful, guard against is you got to have the right type of group of people in a sort of volunteer-based environment. You stick your hand up in there. I'll jump in on that because there are people, who will take advantage of that. I see it time and time again in the day and age we are now where there's a lot of virtual workers. There's a big temptation for people to just be the gray man or the gray woman, right? And pretend like they're doing a lot while not doing very much, and waiting someone else to put their hand in there and contribute. I believe there is a healthy level of management and supervision that still needs to hang around as we move forward into this new operating system. I came from 12 years in the Marine Corps, very regimented bureaucracy, right? I think we do a little bit better than the other services about staying flexible and adapting, taking initiative, but it is very much a hierarchical bureaucracy. And then I transitioned from that into the IT world, right? Which is no bureaucracy. The enterprises I've worked for after being in the Marine Corps, they really pride themselves on being a flat organization. Agile, there's something called the Agile Manifesto that sounds almost communist. And the idea of having managers almost a dirty word. The military and the IT world are on opposite ends of the spectrum. There's a happy in between. There's got to be some sort of happy balance of what is the right amount of control and intellectual freedom and curiosity. Both help the enterprise move forward and enable the people within their enterprise to be the best version of themselves. When you don't have structures in place, people will kind of hide in the shadows and collect a paycheck. That's the negative trade-off. Also, part of being a leader, part of being a manager is looking out for your people and putting them in environments where they can flourish. It's like being a gardener, managing a bunch of different plants. Some of them need more sunshine, some of them need less, some of them need a specific type of fertilizer, some of them need different types of soil, right? Humans are like plants, right? They're all unique. And you have to put them in the right environment in order for them to produce fruit. The gardener or the manager is the person who's responsible for doing that, right? So if we don't have managers, I'm like, well, who's looking after your people, right? That's key, right? We need good management. We need managers that believe their success depends on the successes of people they're responsible for, right?
No, it's great. And I think each organization has to figure out what works for them. This is not a
That's true.
one size fits all. That's a very important point. Some organizations will need more command and control,
Mm-hmm.
and some organizations will need less command and control.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're familiar with the term grow your own. You have to grow your own, as we used to say in the Navy.
Right.
You take someone in, hire for values, hire for heart. If they've got a really positive, good attitude, you could train them to do anything you want.
That's right.
They can do whatever you want them to do. And that's the real goal of what a leader should do. I'm going to help you become great. I'm going to put the right opportunities in front of you and let you grow into them. Learn by doing. I'm big on that. Learn by doing. I absolutely agree. The structure is not going to go away. In my opinion, you're trading command and control for real leadership. Okay. In terms of leadership being this process whereby people have an opportunity to fully become involved in their own future. Every single one of us, Kyle, looks to find control and autonomy over our own destinies. Or as I like to say, people want to become masters of their own fate. I want people to become masters of their own fate. There are always going to be people who are slackers. There are going to be people who just want to ride. Okay, fine. We recognize that. But that's the job of a leader. The job of a leader is to really look at that and say, who's doing the job? Who's contributing? I think that it's almost, in a manner of speaking, that the speed of change and the requirements now of a world headlong into AI is going to pull control out of the hands, if you will, of organizations that can't change, that find change too difficult because they're holding things back.
That's a problem.
That's a problem, right?
Blockbuster, BlackBerry, Kodak. You have to adapt.
Right.
It's not good for your people to stay entrenched. As much as you want to save jobs, as much as you want to keep things going a good way, things move on. If you don't adapt, your whole company goes away, right? That's not good for the community. That's not good for your employees. I agree.
Imagine telling Sears 30 years ago, you guys are going to be out of business in 30 years. And they'd look at you, what? We're Sears. We're basically bulletproof. No, you're not. So companies today have got to make choices and they have to work it. In other words, we need, this is the way our structure is. We like this level of quote unquote command and control. Okay, fine. But we have to have this other thing, this interdependence where people can grow and move forward with the organization. I know you're on to another phone call here in a couple of minutes. And I wanted to ask you one last question. What's that?
I'm really enjoying this conversation.
It's really good.
Really.
I love peeling the onion back. I'm really one of those guys. Let's peel it back and get to the grit. Let me ask you this question, and we'll end it on this. As the pace of innovation accelerates, what skills or mindsets do you think will become essential for professionals to thrive?
As the pace of innovation changes, what skills or concepts are essential for professionals to thrive?
What are they going to need?
Curiosity, a willingness to experiment and try different tools safely. Where I believe artificial intelligence and machine learning has gone very recently is from something that was relegated to more arcane skill set. Only a few people who are really into it knew how to build machine learning models and make these really impressive forecasts. And it's shifted from that to something everybody can use. It's like, I was around during dial-up as well, Dr. John. And I remember Windows 95. I was about 10 years old when Windows 95 came out. And it seemed like before that, it was all command line interface. It was DOS, right? MS-DOS. And being a computer wizard was something like some nerd who was one of those guys who knew how to work with computers. But then the graphical user interface came out, right? The GUI, where you could just click and point, and it's very intuitive. Well, I believe AI has made a similar transition. Right now, it's generalized. Everyone can use it. It's essentially a book. I wish I could give credit to this author, but he says, bring AI to the table. Start using it. Start seeing what it's good at, what it's not good at. Try different generative AI models. Get on Udemy and learn different AI tools. There's things where you can build your own software, right? Quite easily now. They call it vibe coding, in which tools like Cursor or Windsurf allows you to program new software in plain language in English. It converts it all to Python code or C# or JavaScript. Have an open mind, just like you said, John, and start bringing these tools to the table and experimenting. I will caution, though, you need to stay safe with this, especially if you're working inside an enterprise and with your clients' information. One of the first things I recommend after a company is going through an AI transformation is plan. The first thing you do is sit down and plan, and you have a roadmap. The next thing you do before you start implementing any sort of AI solution is you establish guardrails, a little bit of bureaucracy, right? Just to keep things safe. For example, there's something we call network containment, where I believe the leadership in your company should have the mindset of all of our employees want to use AI. It makes them more efficient. Great. Let's let them do it. However, let's let them do it safely. So we're going to give them the tools, right, on our network by which they can deploy their AI. For example, there's Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Provider, GCP, and AWS. These big cloud providers have a whole range of AI tools. Normally, big companies subscribe to one or multiple of these cloud service providers. And if they just utilize the licenses and tools they have on hand, they can equip their employees to build and use AI in a way that is safe and that you're not leaking information. I want to say this one last thing. If you're a leader in a company and wondering which use case to start with that'll have the highest impact and the highest viability in your company, talk to your people, offer them amnesty, saying, look, we know you're using AI already. We want to know what you're using it for. That way we can proliferate it throughout our enterprise. You're not going to be in trouble. A lot of people don't want to talk about the AI they're using because they're not sure if they're allowed to, and they don't want to be replaced by it, right? It's the job of the leadership to put those concerns at rest and say, look, you're not going to get made redundant, right? You're not going to get in trouble, but we want to know what you're using AI for so we can bring it on our network and we can let everybody else do what you're doing, because it's just going to make our company that much better, right? So
I agree. It's a slippery slope, and you have to be careful. There have to be certain levels of control. Ethical AI is a big question right now. I agree with you. Listen, Kyle, thank you so much for being here on the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. It's been a
pleasure.
great conversation. We need to continue this
I would
sometime in
love
the
to.
future.
Sure.
Thank you for your time. I wish you all the success in the world, the best to you in everything.
All right. Thank you, John. Take care, sir.